Hello and welcome to Beyond Games, the YouTube channel all about what's next for gaming. I'm John Jordan, and joining me today is Emma Jane MacKinnon-Lee. How's it going, Emma Jane?
Yeah, going well. Thank you for having me.
Good. And we're going to be talking a bit about, there's actually quite a lot of different technologies and things in this particular kind of interview. So we're going to be talking about blockchain, which sort of underpins kind of what you're doing, but also digital fashion and gaming and quite a kind of a, and for me at least, an interesting kind of intersection of lots of kind of technologies and sort of cultures. You are the founder and CEO of a company called Digital Axe, isn't it? I never quite say that right, actually. You say it in your pronunciation.
Yeah, look, it can be pronounced really any way. I'm not too finicky on it. I mean, I say it Digitalex, but I've heard Digital X. I've heard, everything.
Yes.
It's all the same.
Digital Axe sounds better. Yeah, that has the pronunciation in the right bit. Anyway, and I guess kind of broadly over the last few years, we've seen kind of traditional fashion houses get interested in games because games are big, and so we've seen now it's quite common for these big brands to do sort of skins in games. We've seen actually in the last couple of weeks Burberry getting quite active in some of that stuff, and actually in blockchain as well. But you're sort of really kind of disrupting this sort of thing. It's not just kind of fashion brands putting a skin in a game. I mean, you talk about kind of doing a digital fashion operating system, which sounds really cool. Actually, I've no idea what one of those is, but maybe you can tell us a bit about how you sort of got the spark of inspiration to come up with what to me seems like quite a novel kind of company approaching a market in a very novel way.
Yeah. So I mean, my background more formally from the education side is actually space engineering, mechanical and space engineering, and I went into that after high school. And then I actually dropped out halfway through to go into full-time the crypto Web3 blockchain space because I became incredibly interested for just what it stood for the future, which was all about like decentralization. How do you actually kind of create different economic models, ecosystems that are not based on the current kind of extractive Web2 model that we really operate in today? And I really kind of believed that for the future. And so I became really interested in that, and I started working more in the financial side full-time within crypto and a crypto hedge fund itself that was in Australia and Dubai. And I did a lot of work around blockchain with the Dubai government as well, and was appointed to lead one of their foresight initiatives all around how does blockchain actually implement into their regional economy and kind of promote more sustainability for them. So that was really interesting. And so I really kind of wanted to keep doing things in Web3. And I really liked the finance side, but also it wasn't, exactly where I was super excited about for the future. I definitely I love DeFi and these kind of things, but I started looking more into the gaming side and just really realizing of where the future is going. I mean, I know kind of a lot of people talk about it, but it's so true that we are becoming so much more digitally native. And so much of our lives, it really is online. That's really where a lot of our identity comes from these days. And so I got kind of a lot more excited by that and interested in just how far would that go for the future. And this is, very much where the concept of the metaverse that people talk about a lot comes into, is how does this hybrid digital physical crossover occur, and what actually happens when we become purely, virtually and digitally immersive. And so I became really interested in that. And within this, I started looking at, well, what would be kind of the different industries or ecosystems or that are inevitable for the future. And this is where I came across kind of fashion technology and specifically digital fashion. And just became absolutely obsessed in terms of realizing holy crap, it's so much the future, and why isn't kind of anyone doing anything in this space at the moment? So I became really motivated to go very deep into that sector, but really look at it from the future that I see of it being, decentralized and having really large Web3 components and being authentically Web3. And how does that actually cross over for the future of fashion? And that's really where the concept of Digital X came about. So definitely there is the side of gaming and blockchain and gaming and NFTs and gaming and what all that means. But when you talk about, okay, what's the digital fashion operating system? Well, really the goal and mission of the project and what is being built out is how do we actually be the infrastructure and protocol layers for the future of the fashion industry, for the digital fashion side, for Web3 fashion, for NFTs in fashion, for the hybrid digital physical crossovers, and what does it actually look like so the future could be where any designer, brand, independent studio that wants to actually come into this space has a proper tool set and toolkit that they can actually leverage off to start creating a career, a livelihood, sustainable value within the industry.
Mm-hmm. So a few things to unpick there. One thing I would just say, kind of maybe on a technical basis, that when you say Web3, that sort of is shorthand for sort of blockchain web, isn't it?
So yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, from a purely technical side, blockchain is one of these technologies or tools, just like kind of NFTs is a subset of that. That is defined by Web3, but it's so much more than that because it's a really interesting point that you bring up, and yeah, it's more for the fact that Web3 is all about how do you actually kind of decentralize an ecosystem. So instead, if you think about the Web2 system in terms of what we are operating in now and how it's set up, it's very much kind of an extractive and an exploitative infrastructure in the fact that whoever kind of controls the points of value exchange, they are able to gain directly from that. And usually in that process, they're kind of destroying the commons. So there's a large delta between what they're able to gain and then how that actually impacts people directly around them. And the amazing thing about Web3, it's about kind of democratizing that whole structure where it still allows anyone to come in and to be able to generate value for themselves, generate opportunities, and still have to put in the effort and the hard work for that. But instead of relying on a gatekeeper or kind of a certificate on paper to tell them, yes or no, I can do this or that, it's really more that they have better access to their opportunities and they're able to have a clear roadmap to pave their own way. And blockchain and NFTs is kind of and technology of how that can actually be executed. So definitely it is building in that space, and it's building, say, on Ethereum and Matic network, but it's really more as well about how do we actually create, say, a future of the fashion industry where it's not this huge asymmetry where larger brands take all of the market share, and how do you actually allow an independent designer to come into the space and really start generating value for themselves and do it in a way that instead it's kind of from an ecosystem perspective where they're able to give and take to that ecosystem rather than coming in and it kind of destroying the rest of the ecosystem around them. So that's really, the bigger part and the most amazing part about Web3, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think generally something a lot of people haven't quite gotten onto yet is how, if blockchains are going to be successful, they're going to be successful because they sort of align the incentives for creators and consumers, or in this case, maybe game developers or gamers, or in this case, kind of fashion designers and people who want to take those digital items and use them in metaverses. Maybe we'll get into metaverses or not. I don't know. That may take us into another huge whole thing. But it's kind of interesting that so from your description there, it didn't seem like you obviously didn't have any sort of formal experience in the fashion industry. Is that correct? And do you think that's sort of been an advantage to the way you've approached it, not to have sort of learnt the rules, so to speak?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I really have. I mean, I've always loved fashion growing up, and I've kind of done a lot of in the creative and art side as well. But I definitely think so because it's this whole idea of, a legacy system, and a lot of people talk about it, but the way stuff is set up, I mean, it's very easy to get caught into believing in a structure or a framework, and that's kind of the rules and that's how it is, and you can't operate outside of that framework for, fear that it will ruin something else or affect something else, or it won't be accepted by other people in the industry. And really, the whole point of Digital X, you mentioned, it's like disruption, it's anarchy, but it's about doing it in a way that is really future proofing and future enabling. And how do we actually come in and build in this industry so that, like I said, it is about overturning gatekeepers, legacy systems, and allowing anyone who identifies as a creator. And that doesn't mean that you have to have a certificate on paper. It doesn't mean that you have to, go to a design school and someone else mark off a check mark. And I guess that's, not to get into it, but that's really what Web3 and the metaverse, it's all about. It's about allowing, kind of identifying that we are all players, we're all creators. It's this new economy that's being built. And within that, well, what are the kind of the tools that it can allow us to get there? And this is where blockchain, Web3, and NFTs comes into that. But another interesting thing that you mentioned, it's also about how do you align incentives. And I think that that's where my background, really coming from more the Web3 side, it's realizing that that is such a revolutionary component in itself of what crypto enables. It really allows you to set up personalized and custom incentive structures around ecosystems and then have them streamlined and back value behind that. And this is how you can kind of create, which is, again, kind of this quote unquote digital fashion operating system of being that infrastructure level. It really allows you to create that, where if you're coming purely from a legacy mindset of, okay, well, this is what fashion looks like today, and so this is what it must be static and look like in the future. It's really not. It's so much about that modability and that dynamism. So yeah, I'm very glad that I don't come from the traditional industry, because I don't think that I would be able to have the same flexible and dynamic approach of realizing what needs to be deleted, disrupted and changed in order to get us to where we need to go.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I try not to do it too often, but again, the parallels to the sort of games industry, sort of become apparent to me, because at the moment, the games industry is kind of exactly the same as fashion, in the sense that you have these very big companies who sort of extract the value, and players are very happy with the games, but they pay a lot of money into the developer. The developer says thanks very much, and you get entertainment back again, but you don't get any financial value. And the interesting thing with the game side is how the developer now makes money only if the players are sort of trading their items, and I guess it's a similar thing for the fashion side. So one sort of key element, I guess, when it comes to what you're trying to do is either encouraging or persuading a certain kind of set of existing kind of designers to get involved, and equally, probably more important, getting in, infusing and educating a new generation to sort of start creating. So on the NFT art side, I guess we've seen what sort of happened there. There's everyone can create kind of NFT art. Might not be very good, but most people have understood you can just mint this sort of stuff. Fashion strikes me as being somewhat more complex. So how's that sort of education process going? And without falling into stereotypes, I guess fashion people are very creative, not always the most sort of into technology and kind of learning about using wallets and that sort of stuff. So
yeah.
How's that going with the kind of
Sure. Yeah, so I can tell you a few stories about that. I mean, first going back to when I started all this in September last year. So it started with really running an NFT auction for digital fashion, kind of minting digital fashion NFTs and creating a marketplace. And then these designers came on and they listed them. And it was kind of this whole event around that. And that was really the first stage of Digitalex and how we started. And to do that, it was a lot of hustling to actually get a group of designers to come on board and, be like kind of interested in, okay, I'm going to try out something completely new that I have really no idea about. And it was a lot of hustling on Instagram and that, and reaching out and that. But the interesting thing is that when I did that reach out last year, I really didn't tell the designers that it was NFTs, quote unquote, or it was going to be in Ethereum or minted on the blockchain. Okay. Because like you said, and it's much bigger than just that, but people, I think, try and refine like Web3 and all these things into just the tech itself of like, okay, well, this is blockchain, but it's really hard to explain to someone of why blockchain should be important for them, or why they should actually, bridge into the industry or learn more about it, or set up a wallet. Because when you're used to operating in a legacy system, you're used to operating in kind of one system, you don't know any better, then there is a huge learning curve to come into this space. And, the onboarding into Web3 and crypto, it's absolutely terrible. The interfaces are terrible. It's a huge kind of speak of what, but it's so true, right? Of like what, even like MetaMask and being able to, having to know private keys and all these kind of things, like it's scary. It's not for just anyone to pick up in one day and then be completely comfortable with it. It really is, it's an ongoing educational process. And so when I started this, I really didn't tell the designers anything about that. All I said was it's a new digital fashion marketplace, and there's this technology that allows you to actually verify your ownership of it in the system. And that's kind of where the authenticity and the transparency comes from. And it was more really just focusing on kind of saying, well, this is something new. Would you be willing to try it out? It's just creating one digital fashion garment to then list it. And the worst that can happen is, okay, there was a bit of time, effort put into it, and then it's like, okay, it was a flop or nothing happened. But doing it, that was really a purposeful way, because I did realize that I could sit there and I could try and tell these designers why Ethereum is important, why this, but at the end of the day, it wasn't impacting them viscerally at that moment. And so it was immediately after the auction, they saw the results and they saw, wow, like, holy crap, for the first time, it's like I got kind of thousands of dollars for my design and it's getting directly in my wallet, in a sense, straight away. And it's this whole new system, and I really don't know what's going on, but it's really incredible, and it's just changed my life. It was after that all the designers suddenly became incredibly interested in Ethereum, NFTs, blockchain, and they did their own research and deep dive into it, because now it was like they realized this actually can impact me directly. And I realized why it's important kind of in my future, my career in industry. And that was just then compounded by the whole NFT rush that we saw in the past few months. So definitely it is an ongoing challenge. It's an educational process. And I think everyone in the space kind of experiences it. But it's all about, like, how do you do it in a way where they really see the impact. And that's why when people say kind of, NFTs are dead, or it was a bubble, I really disagree. I definitely think that there was a huge rush, and definitely liquidity rush, that came into the market, and there's still a lot of maturing and adoption to go. But what it definitely proved out for creators, 100%, is that there is kind of this new world that they can bridge into, where they can directly see the value that they're creating from the effort and time that they're putting in. And they don't need a gatekeeper to tell them whether that's good or bad or right or wrong, or accept them into that system. It's if they're willing to put in the work and effort, they can directly see the value back from that. And so I think that that's kind of the bigger takeaway. And what I've been seeing now, I'm actually setting up within our own global designer network a decentralized autonomous organization, a DAO, to go with that. And it's really going to be about focusing on the onboarding and how do you create content and resources so that eventually any designer can come into this ecosystem and directly know how they need to navigate it, or what is their roadmap for actually leveling up and creating a livelihood, creating a sustainable living for themselves. So it's ongoing, but there's definitely ways that it can be done, where it's about focusing on and how does it actually benefit the person coming in, not about what is the technology or why they need to understand it from that level.
Mm-hmm. I think we could probably do another whole conversation about how DAOs are going to be the next big thing, and how, because DAOs sort of solve a lot of the problems, because you get the kind of enthusiast setting it up, and then the sort of the learning process, as you discussed there, that's sort of bit ad hoc at the time, but through a DAO it actually sort of becomes formalized in a kind of really interesting way. But we're not going to talk about we're going to confuse all the non-blockchain people, so I'll try and sort of not fall down that rabbit hole. So I mean, I guess it's early days for you and what you're doing, but you're kind of building this kind of ecosystem, operating system, however you want to describe it. I guess I can understand that people are kind of creating these NFTs, and I've kind of looked at some of them. In an artistic sense, they're kind of some of them quite interesting, I think. But I guess the point of fashion, in the real world, is we like to buy physical items and wear them, and that's an expression of our personality. And I guess digital fashion, the point is there we are going to buy digital items and we're going to wear them in digital, experiences, environments, and that's going to also be sort of part of our sort of digital expression. Obviously, there is a technical issue here, in the sense that if there are sort of games or things like Decentraland out there, but they sort of have technical standards around which content has to be written to. You can't just sort of create any old kind of 3D, or maybe you can, I don't know, but I imagine you can't just create any old 3D kind of item and it works in Decentraland or any of these things. So how much work needs to be done there before, because I guess at some point we sort of at least have a concept that there will be a standard that fashion designers can create digital artwork for, and it will sort of work in most of these digital experiences, and at that point you kind of you have sort of reached this kind of situation where kind of digital fashion is totally takes off and is seen as very normal.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a really good question, and the technical side is kind of like a hidden technical debt as well. It's where a lot of people, and I know because fashion designers, that they come into digital fashion and they're taught with a specific software called Clo3D, at least 90% of the digital fashion community. And the interesting thing is that Clo3D allows you to create a cool, pretty model of a digital fashion garment, But as soon as you want to actually add utility and application to that, so actually say take it into a gaming environment or be able to wear that, the whole process breaks down. And you can't just like drag and drop that model into wherever, whether that be like CSGO, Roblox, Decentraland. It really just doesn't work. And it's an interesting kind of thing because the whole point of fashion, and particularly digital fashion, why it's different from NFT art, as you said, is that the utility side is so important. I mean, it's like in physical fashion. It's the same thing. It's like we don't just want to look at our clothes. We actually want to wear them. We want to use that as a communication channel to self-express. We want to use that as part of our identity. And it's the exact same thing with digital fashion. And as we kind of just become more digitally native, digitally ubiquitous, virtually immersive, whatever you want to call it, fashion is so intrinsic for that. And that's really why I became so interested in it in the first place, was realizing that it's part of human nature. And it's never going to change. And even when people talk about 100 years in the future, we'll all be walking around like cyborgs, in black coats or whatever, it really won't be. Because if you go back to the 1930s, there's videos of people talking about this about 2020, that they think everyone's in metallic suits and that. But then it's like we're here. And it's still a key way of how we actually mod our identities, how we self-express. And it will not change. It's absolutely intrinsic to human nature. And it's really why it's such an amazing industry, because it's the interface that it creates of how we communicate. And so that's really the big problem right now, is that designers are being onboarded and they're learning this one software that is actually not allowing them to achieve what they think they're able to achieve within the digital fashion industry, because it's all about gaming, it's all about this, and the media is talking about it. But from a designer perspective, they do not have a proper way, without a huge learning curve, of being able to say create for games. And not only for that, the current business models and incentive structures in Web 2 don't actually allow them to onboard. Because if we talk about these bigger studios, say like Blizzard, even Epic, it's all done internally by the game developers and within that system. And it's not like a designer can come in and say, hey, I created this cool fashion item. Please, can a character wear it in Fortnite? It really doesn't work like that. And so what we're doing from Digital X, it's actually kind of two ways. Number one, from the technical standard side, we're actually developing a 3D file format or transfer format that is all about how do you actually take, say, a kind of dead file like a Clo3D file and allow that to be dynamically interoperable and have kind of considerate logic embedded within the actual file format structure itself, so that a new file can kind of be created on top of that then maintains the correct amount of fidelity and quality, but can actually be portable into a different output application environment. And how that's done, it's really about just creating a system where there is considerate logic and kind of, or opinionated judgment in a sense, that is put on into the file structure of what is actually the output location that the file needs to be transformed into. Because right now, it's very much a blind system. You can think about when a file is kind of transformed or that, it's really, okay, just put it in this structure and hope that it will work, or hope that it will be interoperable. But for the first time, we're kind of putting it in where, well, if the structure is able to know, if the code's able to know, well, I'm actually going into this output environment and these are my requirements. Well, what information can I retain that still ensures that there isn't a huge fidelity loss, and it kind of does the job of maintaining the creator's intent, but then is able to be ported into that environment. And so it's kind of like a standard, but it's much more than that, because having one standard really wouldn't work within the industry, because then it's expecting that every environment that we operate in is going to be the same, that Decentraland will work the same as CSGO, it will work the same as this virtual reality metaverse and that, which it won't be the case if we really think about it. And so it's more about how do you allow for more seamless modability and dynamism between these different environments, so the correct connections can be made between the actual information space itself. So that's one part that we're working on. But the second part is really more about the business model side, or the commercial model side, and how do you actually align incentives. And this is why crypto and Web3 is really interesting and unique, and it's so how do I say, like it's a must-have within the industry. It's not something that can kind of just be cut out, because it's all about how do you actually align incentives between developers, between designers, between players, so it makes sense for them to operate within an ecosystem and actually create a livelihood for that, actually create money and value for themselves, rather than it being completely extractive. And this is, it's the same thing why it doesn't really make sense from, say, Blizzard's perspective right now to say, hey, designers, come and create fashion for me. and then have this in their game, because when they look at their balance sheet, that's either a huge economic loss or it's a huge work output when they're not being able to kind of get maybe the skill or resources back that they require to operate within a commercial environment. So it's the same thing that crypto incentives really allow, is about how do you actually align people, creators, just stakeholders within an actual decentralized commercial ecosystem. So that's very much what we're focusing on, and that's really through actually our casual esports platform that's first being iterated on.
Yeah, we're coming to the end of the interview, but yeah, it would be good to sort of touch on the esports thing, because that's something that's live at the moment. If people are very sort of interested, they can go and have a look at that. I was having a look at it the other day. So can you talk a little bit about kind of what the plans are for? Is it ESPA?
ESPA, yeah, exactly. So
did you say ESPA? See, I'm hopeless at titles today. ESPA, yeah.
No
Okay.
problem. Like I said, it can be modded. I really don't mind. So, yeah, so ESPA, it's the first casual esports platform, and what I mean by that, it's really being built up into this ecosystem that will allow eventually any player to come on any time through kind of our application, and then they log in, they kind of create their identity system, and they can choose from a wide range of games, mods, applications that they can go into and start playing. And when they start playing, they're actually kind of getting scored on a leaderboard, or they're accruing points that then can be converted into value for them through our native cryptocurrency Mona. So it's all about how do you kind of have this play to earn, or allow people to generate a livelihood and a career through play or casual play. And if you think about kind of esports at the moment, it's very much like a hierarchy of, okay, you have to like absolutely break out on Twitch or something to get noticed, or you have to go through a system. But how can we completely kind of democratize and decentralize that whole system, so anyone, just for the love of play, which is really about the future, it's about a player creator economy in a sense, can come on and they can start having a direct roadmap to level up from kind of amateur to pro, and do that casually. So log on anytime, anywhere, and start accruing these points, and then actually generate and transfer that into value. So it's very much the way it works, but kind of the unique ways that it's Web3 native, and it's actually the digital fashion, like the digital fashion skins in a sense, and these NFTs that the players wear in game, that actually authenticate them throughout the whole system. And they actually provide direct functionality in the game, where it's not a pay to win, where it's like the fashion allows you extra perks or kind of level ups within the game, but it's more within the complete ESPA esports metagame, that the fashion skins have a functionality of recharging. So they actually define based on the rarity on chain, whether that's kind of a common NFT, or it's like, has say a collection of 1,000 compared to a one of one single edition NFT or fashion garment. It actually kind of indicates how long a player has within the ESPA metagame before they have to recharge their outfit, either by kind of reaching certain tiers, or actually going into the marketplace and then kind of resuiting up or rebuying an outfit. And then the whole profit distribution is split between the fashion designers, which are actually creating these skins to be listed on the marketplace, the developers and the modders that are putting up their content to be part of the ecosystem, and then also the players themselves that are reaching these different tiers. So it's all about, again, really creating this aligned incentives between almost a DAO or decentralized autonomous organization for esports.
Excellent. No, that's nice. It sort of brings it. I guess it's the sort of the first instance of kind of bringing. So I guess broadly we could say it's fashion, but it's not kind of some of the high end 3D fashion stuff. But it's making skins, and that's creating a market for these designers to make still cool stuff, but different sort. I suppose the one I was looking at was Among Us, and I think Minecraft is the other one, isn't it?
Minecraft. But this is the interesting thing. Yeah. If I add to that a little bit, is that and this is really why it's why it's kind of a false premise, in the sense that, like I was saying, when designers come into digital fashion, they think, okay, if I learn clothes 3D or this, then I'm solved, and I can make a really cool 3D garment, and then somehow this will allow me to operate within this industry. But then there's the hidden caveats that will hold on. What's the actual biggest digital fashion market? Well, it's Roblox and it's Minecraft. These like weird pixelated skins, in a sense, are the ones where digital fashion designers, for those markets, there is an established market there, and they're able to actually create a livelihood and living from it. And this is the whole point of kind of really what we're doing when you talk about the onboarding side, is also educating designers that the digital fashion market, it's not about just having one script of this 3D garment and that's it. It's really about how do you upskill and you create, you know, your own kind of ability to be able to build for these different markets and create skins for Minecraft, for Roblox, for a high-end 3D fashion game, and without kind of at the moment just relying purely on technology to get you there, because as we just discussed, there is a lot of caveats with, okay, you can't just take a Clo3D file or model and port that directly into a game. So to create that market, it's also about understanding of where things are today, and definitely fidelity will get better. But yeah, making sure that designers are aware that this is also where the markets are, and this is very much just a part of digital fashion, the way people want to express themselves in Minecraft or Roblox as they want to do it in wearing a really cool 3D fashion AR outfit.
Excellent. Lovely, excellent. We've covered a lot of ground there, but I think we've there is a coherence running through it. So I've learned a lot. That's pretty. I found it interesting. So I can only hope that the people watching have found it interesting as well. But thank you so much, Emma Jane, for explaining all that. And we shall keep our eyes on what happens with the project in its various forms. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you for having me.
And thanks for watching the video. Please subscribe to the channel. As I say, Beyond Games, we are sort of really looking at what's happening now for games. There's lots going on in terms of specific sort of game technologies, but as you kind of see, sort of game technologies leaking out into all these other kind of interesting areas, and also being influenced by fashion, architecture, filmmaking, interactive arts. All this sort of stuff is all sort of mushing itself together, and fascinating new kind of forms of entertainment are emerging. So please subscribe to the channel if you're interested in that sort of thing. But thanks for watching the video, and see you again soon.